What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over this evening's big MLB slate. I'm going to be doing it myself, so I have my own way of doing it when I'm not going back and forth with Bobby. What we're going to do is take a look at the slate kind of overall. We'll look at it from a top-down perspective, and then what we're going to do is build some, do some sample builds to kind of just give you an idea of, again, how to start building your process. Just a couple of, I guess, announcements. So I'm not going to be around later. I'm actually going to the Yankee game tonight to see the Will Warren experience. And so Bobby's going to be doing the live stuff at like 5:30 by himself. And yeah, so what we're going to do, this is going to be a little bit different. I'm sharing my screen, and I'm actually looking at the TrueDFS layout. I usually go straight to SaberSim, but just to show you guys like what it would look like if you were a TrueDFS subscriber, it basically looks the same, okay? But we'll go over some of the different columns and things like that to make things a little different. So the first thing I like to do for the slate is just take a look at my projections and draw some assumptions with what I think is going to be the top plays, what I think is going to be the highest owned, and things like that. Before we do that, we should identify the one weather game. So it looks as though, at least at this early juncture, the Mets at Braves has some risk to it. And again, this is obviously something you need to monitor throughout the day. But as of now, the Mets and the Braves look to be the one that may run into some issues. So what do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got a billion games, and a bunch of them start at 7 o'clock, and it goes all the way out to the Dodgers and the Padres, same as last night. So before we get back to SaberSim, we'll take a look at projections, the way that I kind of display them. And this is sort of on my own, a mimic of what my own spreadsheet looks like. But if you wanted to get kind of a look for what the slate could look like, you go to TrueDFS and you'll select, for example, mine. And the first thing we're going to look at is the player projections. And what I do is I look at this Sheets value score column. And all this is, for those that are not acquainted with this, this is just kind of my own take on some different metrics that have been bandied about throughout the course of the years that attempt to combine both point per dollar and raw fantasy points. Like Roto Grinders had something called RG value. There are others that have stuff like this. And this is kind of my own take on that, to try to account for both raw fantasy points and point per dollar. So what I like to do is just look and see what this looks like for the slate. And I'm listing it by players. And normally the pitchers are going to have the best Sheets value scores. They usually have the best projections. And what I see right now is Will Warren and Brian Wu really standing out over everybody with respect to their value score. Now, again, you have to get used to what these numbers mean. Let's just say that anything over 40 is really good, okay? Whether it be for a player or for a pitcher, but for a pitcher, anything over 40 is really, really good. So Will Warren does have a very, very strong value projection today. And then the gap down to Brian Wu is sizable enough to notice. And then the huge drop from Brian Wu down to these other options makes it appear as though this is a very, two-pitcher slate. Even though it's a 12-game slate or whatever, the idea is to try to make, especially for single entry and lower risk, to try to make the small, the bigger slate as small as you can. On this particular slate, Will Warren and Brian Wu just sort of do stand out. Now, again, you're also going to look at the ownership, and it's not, it's not like I'm doing anything off the board here. These are going to be two of the highest owned guys, but they're not that high owned. And then you're going to see Robbie Ray and Ben Brown kind of tied for the next kind of pitching tier, okay? And then Dean Kremer. So typically, the way I look at a slate like this, it's going to be, okay, if you want to play the chalkies, the best plays, it's going to be some kind of combination of Will Warren and Brian Wu, okay? And then you'll see that Robbie Ray does serve as a pretty natural pivot because you're going $800 more. And then Ben Brown is a very natural pivot off of Will Warren because, again, you're right in the same tier. So probably some combination of these four are going to make some sense. The next thing I look at are the stacks. So let's just see. Do we have the stacks here? Oh, here are the stacks. Okay. Oh, wow. This is pretty interesting the way they have them listed. All right. So stacks, last updated. All right. This makes sense. So there are 3 ways to look at this. Okay. 3 ways to sort this. One is by raw stack, which is basically raw points. And then there's value stack, which is basically point per dollar. And then if you scroll over here, you get this modified stack. Now, again, just to cut through all the jargon here, what modified stack is essentially the sheet's value score that I talked about earlier that's just extrapolated into the stack. So what this is showing you are the top 5 players in for each team adding up their modified stack score. Okay, excuse me, their modified their sheet's value score. So I bet you if you add up all 5 of these guys' sheet's value score from the previous table, you'd get this modified stack score. Okay, so that's what this is. So what I like to do is kind of is sort by this to give me an idea of what stacks look to be the best. So it looks as though Houston again, and who is this? The White Sox? Let's see. You got to scroll back here. It's a little cumbersome. Yeah, so it looks like Houston and then the White Sox are the 2 best stacks according to the way that I rank them. And then you see like a drop to like a whole bunch of others. Okay. So again, the way I like to look at it before I even start building is to see what kind of the regular projections would give me. Okay. And so it looks as though either Houston or the White Sox or some combination of the 2. And then again with the pitchers, Will Warren and Brian Wu. So sometimes, okay. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just literally just go into a DraftKings lineup and see what that could look like. So you want to do that? We'll have some fun here. So let's do that. Let's go into DraftKings. We'll pick up just a regular thing. Let's just see how easily we can get to what I just said. Okay. So let's say Brian Wu, Will Warren, and then kind of like our favorite of those stacks. So it looks as though Houston was the top one. So the question is which Houston guys to play. Well, I mean, let's go back to the stacks and see which ones they list under modified stacks. So that would be Walker, Diaz, Altuve, Hummel, Pena. So let's just see if we can put all those guys in here. So Walker, Altuve, what did I say? Pena, Smith, and Hummel. Is that what we said? Right. So you can do this extraordinarily easily. Okay. So that is something to consider. Okay. That maybe you don't even need to have the savings with Warren and Wu. Maybe you could play Wu and Robbie Ray or something like that and still play these Houston stacks. Or you could, instead of playing the modified stack players for the Astros, scroll back over here, and these are the ones that are listed just by raw points, and see if there's any difference. Like you could insert parities instead of Smith or Hummel, for example, and you could afford that pretty easily as well. Okay, so this would be a kind of a good place to start. And then if you wanted to, if you really wanted to be pure, you can go check out who the White Sox were, that were in those stacks, and maybe do a 5-3 with them. I can't really throw out the whole lineup for you guys, but and then you could look at expensive one-offs. So this is a very affordable type of slate, okay? Which means that I think that the ownership on all of this is going to be pretty extended. Okay, I really think these are going to be even more popular maybe than I'm projecting right now. Okay. So next thing we'll do is I keep thinking of whether it's better to just do the DraftKings build and then go back to FanDuel and start all over again, or do the FanDuel projection and go back and build both. So let's do it the second way. Let's go to FanDuel, and we'll do the same type of analysis. And this is all like pre-built. This is getting like a real top-down look at everything. So as far as projections go, same thing. You'll see it's literally a two-pitcher slate on FanDuel. It's either going to be Will Warren or Brian Wu, and then a really big drop down to the Robbie Ray group. And then with respect to stacking, again, Houston, and then the Yankees actually with the returning Giancarlo Stanton. So the Yankees show up to be a lot better on FanDuel than on DraftKings. So it looks as though Houston is very strong on both sites. The other one you'll notice, you might notice, is that Minnesota shows up a little more on FanDuel, as does Oakland. Excuse me, the A's, whatever you want to call them. Okay. So let's go ahead, I guess, and then you can feel free to ask questions if you want. But let's go now to the SaberSim view, and let's start building. And in doing so, I could show you like a few things. Maybe you knew, maybe you didn't, about the way these things are displayed. Now, it's very similar to your regular SaberSim view with a couple of exceptions. So here, it's a couple of decisions you have to make kind of right off the bat. Well, before that, you want to decide what you're playing. So I already have a contest file created within DraftKings. I mean, I entered stuff on DraftKings. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to upload those lineups. And I have the dummy lineups here. You know, they're not really lineups yet, but there will be in a minute. And the reason why we do that is we'll preload the information on what you're playing into the entry editor, so that, you know, when you do your contest sims, it's going to have all this data about how many entrants, what the caching levels are, and what field lineups we're gonna use. Okay. But the real question that you're going to have to ask before you start building is which projection set you're going to want to use. Now, again, you don't want to go too crazy with this, but there are 3 options that, or actually, I guess 4, that we offer here. Here is these SaberSim projections, which, I mean, they're great. I mean, I have nothing bad to say about them. But if you want still kind of a different view, these are Goldies. Now, what Goldie does is he aggregates somewhat across the industry, and in addition to that, he puts his own little spin on it. And here are my projections over here under Sheets. So there are 3 columns here, but then you have this My Projection, and question is, which one do you use? So there's this little gear here where you get to pick. So the first thing I'm noticing, which is sort of interesting, it says here show TrueDFS projection by default, and it's not doing that. It's actually showing the SaberSim one by default, but just so we can see. So if you want to switch to Gold, you would click here, and then the My Projection will switch to Goldies. Or if you want to switch to Sheets, go here. And then Average, I presume that this is averaging all 3. It certainly looks that way. There's no other way that could be accurate. Yeah, so what this is doing is averaging all 3. I could spend, you know, a full day doing a dissertation on the benefits and the drawbacks of using the average when it comes to combining projection sets. I think overall, for me, it's probably not a great idea to average anything in baseball, because the way these teams correlate, or the way results correlate, you know, if SaberSim is making a projection of, say, some first baseman, the second baseman is kind of feeding off that first baseman's projection. So its whole projection set is kind of like, it's whether it's good or not, it's at least pure. You know what I mean? Like, it's like one projection has everything to do with the other one. So if you start mixing projection sets in baseball, you might be mixing apples and oranges to some degree. I know Bobby likes to do the average or whatever. I don't like doing that in baseball. Basketball is fine. All sports which are kind of non-correlated, like basketball and even football to some degree, I don't mind. In MMA, I don't mind averaging, but in baseball and hockey, for example, I don't like it. Something about the math of that just doesn't sit well with me. So the first thing you are going to have to do is pick what projection set that you're going to want to use. So I'm going to use, I'll use mine for the purposes of this discussion. Okay. The other thing you could do is you could import your own. So all you have to do is you have to get a, you know, if you have it on an Excel spreadsheet, you can do that just to kind of show you how this works. Upload, and then, I mean, I have it templated so that it, you know, so it comes in like this. Whatchamacallit, I have it templated so it comes in like this. So it's and you probably click unlisted players or whatever. Now, one thing that you'll see, which is kind of cool, is that my projection looks the same, even though I did an external output, and that's because these are my projections. And you'll see like all my owns are the same. So the other thing that you'll see, this the green and red, for example, what this means is that my ownership or whatever one I'm using is lower than SaberSim's ownership. And here, if it's green, that means it's higher than SaberSim's. Like, so it says flagship. Okay. If my projection is higher, it's going to look green, as you'll see, and if it's red, it's going to look like that. Okay. So that's question one: is what projection set that you use. So the second decision you have to make is, do you want to make rules? Okay. Do you want to say, I want a minimum of certain things, certain stacks or whatever it is? I only want 30% of a certain pitcher. I don't want this. And this is my opinion, right? My opinion is that pre-build, that you don't make any rules at all. Okay. And especially if you have the package where you can build 5,000 lineups, what I prefer you do is build the 5,000 first. So at least you know that you have 5,000, you know, reasonable lineups. And then if you want to reduce your exposures or reduce your stacks or whatever after the fact, then you can certainly do that really easily because you'll have 5,000 good lineups to choose from. I don't like telling the thing what to do beforehand. Okay, that's my opinion. So I'm going to keep this the same, minimum salary the same, no stack exposure requirements, no nothing. Okay, and then we're going to just hit build lineups. And for those, again, that you're the uninitiated, SaberSim is now taking whatever projections we put in there and simulating these games, you know, hundreds of thousands of times or whatever. And then it comes up with a whole range of outcomes of these players. It's going to come up with a range of outcomes of these lineups. And then it's going to give you like a whole pile of lineups. Okay. It's going to give you 5,000 of what they consider is, I don't know, good high upside lineups, whatever that means. But we're going to get into what that means in a minute. And it's going to then give you the option to rank them in certain ways. So for today, again, I'll show you the different ways that we can rank these things. So you'll see, first of all, that my lineup's 65. So the reason why it says only 65, even though we built 5,000, is because it knows that I'm playing 65 lineups, because I told it this. So it's rating the top 65. Now, if you want, we can take a look at the whole pool, which is there. Okay. But the thing is that what it's rating them by right now is Saber score. Okay. We haven't done anything yet. We haven't run a contest sim or anything like that. It's just rated by Saber score. And again, for those who are the uninitiated, Sabre score, I can see it from, I've never looked at it from this view. But if you do get into the weeds here, Sabre score does take into account ownership. It does take into account the fact that they're looking for the 99th percentile outcome or things like that. And it's not a bad way to start, okay? What it's not doing is take into account specifically the tournaments that you're playing, and tailoring them to those. Oh, here it is. Wait, so it was Sabre score. Okay, so here it is. So Sabre score large slate. If you click on this eyeball here, this will tell you the formula that is being used to calculate these lineups. And you'll see, this some of my projection, you know what that means, obviously. And then you see this 0.7 times the 99th percentile outcome of the lineup. That's important because we want, we don't want the median. We want what happens if things go well. And then you see minus 0.6 times average ownership. What that means is your lineup's going to get dinged if it's too highly owned. And you also see that we're getting a minimum uniques of 3 as kind of the default here. So yeah. So what I like to do here is take a look and see what you could do is take a look and see who you'd be getting if you just use Sabre score. And not surprisingly, top stack you'd be getting are the Astros. And we looked at that when we looked at the projections. And normally, top projected teams are going to, show up in the most lineups. Let's take a look at the pitching today. So pitching, it would look like Will Warren would be the #1 pitcher, followed by Brian Wu, Robbie Ray, and Ben Brown. I mean, pretty much exactly what we suggested. Okay, so we can do a lot of things here. I mean, here again, if we wanted to then minimize or maximize exposures, you could do it here. Like, let's just say I don't want 78% of Warren. I want maximum of 50 for whatever reason. What's cool is you could just put 50 in here and click out. You see it applied. And what you don't have to do, let's see, apply. And now we have less, and because we didn't have to rebuild, because remember, we built all 5,000 lineups, and it's automatically seeking that pool and then getting your top, lineups that only have 50% of him or less. So let's remove that filter. Okay. And you could do that with stacks. You could do that with whatever. And so if you do have a take, then you could go ahead and put it in here. Again, I very rarely have strong enough takes to overcome all these simulations. But if you want, you can do that. Let's take a look again at the stack exposure. Again, I don't really mess with it too much, but you'll see mostly 5-man stacks, which is usually good for baseball, so that's good. And we already said that Houston was the top one. So again, you could just load these lineups in, and then you're just kind of off to the races. No problem. But if you want to get a little fancier, if you want it to be a little more precise, what you're going to do is you're going to run these contest sims. And again, all this is doing is taking these 5,000 lineups that you created, and then it's then simulating the outcomes of those lineups against what SaberSim feels the rest of the field is going to play. And when you look in the contest tabs right here, this details what those fields are. Okay, like, if you wanted to click on here, whatchamacallit, the field for the high stakes tournament, okay, you would click on this, and then you can analyze. You can analyze the exposure, okay. Brian Wu and Will Warren, like 50% each, maybe in that particular tournament. Okay. So in this tab field, it gives you in this contest field, it gives you the option to change what field you're going to compare your lineups to, like if you want to. So SaberSim has already done all their back testing and preloaded the fields which it feels that the rest of that you're going to be comparing yourself to. But if you want, you can change it. And I don't want to make this video all about those processes, but you can be as complicated and as advanced as you want depending on your skill set. There's some of you out there who are extraordinarily good at creating your own contest fields or blending them or doing whatever. And for you people, you can certainly put whatever you want in the field lineups. I myself, I'm not that good, so I like to, especially for baseball, rely on the field lineups that SaberSim has created. Now, again, SaberSim does, I'll say, have flaws. Some would say that it creates too many lineups with really bad stacks, like 2-2-2-2s and things like that. But what that's designed to do is replicate the bad lineups that are going to be in every field. Okay, so again, in 5 years, what we have now is going to be looked at as pretty trivial, but this is what we have, like right now. And I don't know why it's trivial. It's just, I know because of the way technology works, that it is trivial, but I don't know exactly how to improve it. All right, so we'll go back into these lineups. And now that we've kind of like set the stage for what we're going to do, right? We're going to now run these contest sims. And I always find it fascinating to see the difference in your exposures from when you ran your regular Saber score build to when you actually applied the contest sims. So you see this in the background. By the way, any questions, feel free to pile them in here. Okay, so it now, instead of now rating everything by Saber score, now it's rating everything here by ROI. Okay. So the one thing that you'll notice before we even apply the particular thing to the particular field, okay, now it's just taking the average sim of all all your contests. One thing you'll notice right off the bat is the difference in exposure. So like right now, if we're just going to look at these 65, you look at the team stacks, and now you're going to see 23% Angels being the highest and almost no Houston, right? And the reason for that is it's really taking to heart this idea that if everybody's playing something, you should play something else. And it's really predicting what everybody's going to be playing as far as, doing these contest fields. So when you play this contest sim game, you are putting a lot of faith into these contest fields because if they're wrong, then this whole build is going to be a disaster. Okay, mathematically, it's going to be a big disaster. But so Angels, Baltimore, Cleveland, Tampa. Okay, and then with respect to the pitchers, let's see. We are going to be at 67% Will Warren. So the pitching has not been really not been dinged so much. And that makes sense too, right? Because they teach you all the time that the pitchers are always less variant than the hitters, So it's very rare that you'll get all kinds of wild pitching pivots, in baseball in general. Where you're going to get your pivots is in the hitting. So what you can do is you could directly fill all of these contests, all these into your contests. And what you do is when you hit save the contest, what it's going to do is it's going to put the actual contest or the actual lineup in the contest that it belongs in, because you'll see that each of them has a different contest field that it's using. So that's why when you save the contest, it's going to be very specific about which contest to put yourself in. So you can just go ahead and do that. Hit save, select contests. And if you want to look at it, again, all the information on it. Okay. And then we can just go ahead and download this, upload this. And just pile it in here. And that could get you a pretty nice, you know, pre-lock build. Now, again, if you wanted to get a little fancier, you know what you could do? You should go into team stacks or stack exposures. And I'll sometimes do this, is that I believe that sometimes SaberSim is not diligent enough with getting rid of some of these what I call bow wow stacks. Like these stacks, they're just don't have any 5-mans. So we can just go ahead if we want, go back here, X these out, hit apply, and you'll see it automatically takes them all out. Boom. And then we can just go ahead and resave everything. And then download and upload. Now, another thing you could do if you wanted is you could try to diversify a little bit more. You could go more min uniques, really trying to diversify your lineup. So if you feel as though you're not particularly confident or for whatever reason, you could go ahead and demand that your lineups be much different from one another. And the way you do that is just keep using this drop down from min uniques 1 to min uniques 2 to min uniques 3. But what you have to do is you have to keep an eye on these metrics here, because what these metrics are, these rank your entire portfolio here. So of these 65 lineups, the total average projection is 98, and there's none of them that are below 49% ROI. So we have to keep an eye on that as we continue to go more min uniques. So like right now, I mean, this is actually not affecting it at all, which is good. Now you see it kind of dinged it a little bit over there. So yeah, on a slate like this, you could go quite a few min uniques without really affecting your portfolio. Now what it is doing though is it's getting you more bow wow stacks. So it is really trying to compromise the integrity of your lineups by once you get into these min uniques 5. So I can go back to min uniques 4 or min uniques 3, you know what I mean? Like, which is I think where we were in the first place. Yeah. And then we'll go ahead again, save the contests. I do not use the optimizer view. Well, okay, you're saying a couple of different things. Do you guys always run the sims, or do you ever use the optimizer? Okay, so do I want to get into this a little bit? Sure. So all an optimizer does is it takes the rules that you give it, and then it rates lineups based on projected points. That's what an optimizer does. What SaberSim does, not even in contest sim mode, is it simulates the game outcomes and it creates lineups that have more upside than your regular optimized lineups. And that's what the first thing I did was when I looked at this thing by SaberScore. That's kind of like this, that's kind of a really just advanced optimizer. It's not even an optimizer, it's kind of like a smart randomizer, you know? And so that's really the difference. So it's not as if, I don't know if the question is, do you ever use an optimizer? I haven't used a straight optimizer in like years, but what I will sometimes do is just use the SaberScore rankings, then a SaberScore ranking, then using the contest sims. If for whatever reason I don't feel, if I don't feel confident at all in the fields, then to me it's probably doing more damage than good. Okay. Oh, here's another I'll push back another thing. I think about this a lot, Adam. Let's just say there was a lineup out there that was a 4-4 lineup that just because the way, yeah, pretty much, Danny, is let's just say that just because the way these guys correlated and the way it was whatever, that there was a 4-4 lineup that, you know, was just the nuts or whatever it was. I wouldn't even have a chance to see it. You know what I mean? If I did a pre-build. At least if I did a post-build, I would see what's going on here. You know what I mean? Like, and so, again, I'm not saying that I always have to cross out the 4-4s after the fact either. You know, I just know that at least at the beginning, I have good EV lineups. And the other thing is that, I mean, I guess you could always like scan for plus EV or negative EV or things like that. Yeah, I guess. Okay. And I still have not determined what's best yet. And I still do it differently, depending on my mood. Okay. So that looks like that's not quite the end of this. So as long as we're doing this, one little, again, small subtlety. Maybe I shouldn't get into this. Okay. Direct fill versus autofill. If you do use the autofill way of filling these lineups, it just behaves a little bit differently. What it then does is it literally takes the order of these things and finds the best lineup for this one and then removes it from the pool. And then it goes down to the next one, finds the best for that, removes that from the pool, and so on. It just diversifies it a little bit better. And I usually do the autofill because what autofill is supposed to do is basically do direct fill one contest at a time. So it does save a little time. So we can just go ahead and do that. So let's do this. But then you get this unable to meet your required exposures. You get these bow wow stacks too. So I'm just gonna keep the direct fill in there for now. Okay, let's go into FanDuel and we'll do the same thing. And you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do the other approach. Okay? We're gonna do the other approach for FanDuel. So what we're gonna do, let's pick, I don't know, again, question one. Which projections do we use? SaberSim, Goldie, Sheets, or the average? Again, for reasons I just described earlier, I don't like using the average. So this one will, you know what, I'm greedy. I'll use mine again. Okay, so Sheets, good. Again, no changes except let's demand certain stacks pre-build. So let's empty this out. And on FanDuel, I'll be really greedy and just 4-4s and 4-3s. I mean, we could. Or you could do 4-2-2s. Okay, let's do that. Let's do 4-4s, 4-3s, and 4-2-2s. And none of those other lineups are going to be admitted to the pool. Okay? So let's build lineups and see what we get. Oh, okay. For those of you who have been watching, what did I forget to do? Everybody can think. Pause the video. What I forgot to do is I forgot to upload my contest. Now the good news is I'm only playing because I'm going to the Yankee game. I don't think I really have the patience to do like all these late swaps and all this stuff from the game. So I don't know if I'm going to really do any MMEing. Maybe I'll just play like 3 big lineups or whatever. So I saved these 3 dummy lineups and just 3 in the monster. We'll just put them up in there. And it's loading the builds. see what we get to. Meanwhile, I have a couple of unanswered questions to SaberSim regarding the League of Legends builds. And you see, like, how as the company gets bigger, they have so much less time for minutia. I'm trying to get an answer to these questions before it becomes impossible to get an answer to those questions. Like, there's like League of Legends is so far down on their list of things they're worried about that, you know, for me to get an answer on that, it's hard enough in June, but I got to get it in June because once it gets to August and September and they're all about football, I'll never get an answer. Okay, so, all right, same drill. So what we did was let's first take a look at by Saber score, see what we get here. Now, I only have 3. So looks like Twins and Yankees, Twins and Orioles, Twins and Padres. You know, we built 20, but we could obviously build more. We can look as many as them as we want. We can look at 500, 5,000. But let's just do it for single entry stuff. So let's just do it for these 3 lineups. Okay. So when we order these things by, well, there's one other thing we're going to look at before we leave, and this is for the people that are only real like psychos. So if you're like real psychos out there, hang in there. We're gonna look at the whole spreadsheet for DraftKings. But give me a second. We'll get there. So if we just ordered it by Saber score, we would get we have Twins in every lineup. So Twins Yankees, Twins Mets, Twins Orioles. Okay. So now let's run the contest sims and see what difference we get. I bet you it's not even any different at all. That's going to be my prediction. Huh. Yeah, it looks as though it's the same, right? Twins Mets, Twins. Oh, this one gets Twins Reds and Twins Mets again. Now, again, be careful of the Mets because of the weather over there. But, you know, same thing. No big deal. We'll just save these and put them in for now. Okay. So what I was going to do, let me just save these. Okay. All right. So if you wanted to, okay, you go back into DraftKings. I think you can get here from the TrueDFS interface. If you can't, I apologize, but I think you can. So let's go back to this build 3. We already did the ROI. We already did the sims, everything like that. Now what I want to do is I want to download this entire pool and just kind of take a look at it. What is this? Hold on. Hello? Oh, good. Can I call you back in like 5 minutes at this number? Okay, 5 minutes. Bye-bye. So what this is just the overall just like data like on all of these lineups. Like if you were so inclined to like look at this. So if you want to filter it, like all of these lineups, like all these different metrics we talked about, it's all here. Like if you want to see like the ball 4 ROI, for example, you can sort by that. And you want to just sort by projected by 25th, 50th percentile, how much they're in the sim optimal. Just these are the different default metrics, the Saber scores, depending on the depending on the what contest they're in. So again, I don't want to get into like all different ways to use this, but maybe another day. But you do have access to all of this data. And that's pretty much all I have for today. Bobby hopefully will give you a little more substantive knowledge when he does the thing at 5:30, but this is, I guess, more process. And I will be at the Yankee game rooting for or against Chalk Will Warren. And we shall see what develops.